Welcome back. You're watching Medically Speaking with me, Meenakshi Upreti. I'm being joined by Dr. Jyoti Kapoor. She is a renowned psychiatrist from the National Capital. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us on NewsX. Ma'am, we were just talking about children being affected from coronavirus. There are a large number of children who are now reporting positive to COVID. We are seeing an uptick when we speak of the number of children who are getting affected due to COVID because of the same classes, which had resumed. Most schools have stopped. How do you think it affects the psyche of a parent and a student? Very difficult time. It was a very anxiety-riddled time for all of them. And now there is a question mark on classes once again.
You're right there, Vishali. And like the doctor before us said, and what I've been saying for the last 2 years, we have to now accept the fact that COVID is there and it's going to stay amongst us. And there is no way that, we can keep ourselves withdrawn from regular life to be able to protect ourselves. We have to go out. We have to be able to develop immunity. Now, we already know that most of the population above 18 has been vaccinated, and now 12-year plus children are also getting the vaccination. So it's obvious that when there is a certain population, a certain age group which has not been vaccinated, it will get infected. Now, getting infected is not such a problem. What is more important from the perspective of the mental health of people around here is that we have to look at the situation factually and not just follow the numbers. I mean, there is no need to hit the panic button the moment we hear that, so many cases of COVID have appeared, because I think in the previous section also, the severity of the symptoms is under control. And like we are adapting to the virus, frankly speaking, even the virus is adapting to us, because for virus also, it is a new host. So Essentially, whenever something like that happens, the situation is obviously immediately serious. And we were all worried about it initially, but 2 years have passed and we know a lot about to its host so that it doesn't kill its host. So the mortality has gone down. So as as a lay person, as a parent of a child who has to go to school, I think we have to come to terms with the fact that there will be infections, like we get infected with dengue in this season, or we get infected with other viral illnesses. COVID is also something that we are going to catch. But if we keep a positive attitude, if overall the health of individual is, maintained at a proper level, and as a psychiatrist, I believe stress plays a major role when it comes to, recovery from any illness. So if we have a positive attitude, I'm sure that we'll be able to tackle it much better.
Right. I think it's a very positive message coming from your side, ma'am. Time to reduce the stress. We don't need to hit the panic button, considering the cases, of course, have not risen one phenomenally when we look at numerically. And of course, the severity of the cases is very low. But what about students? And I ask you this specifically because there were many who had perhaps not gone to school at all. For example, toddlers. You start going to school and within days, your schools get shut. Many other students, who had been waiting for 2 years to attend classes, finally, they had an opportunity to interact with other kids, which is extremely important for the growth of children as well. What would you say? What do you say, or what do you think how this current crisis which has happened, the mandate which has come from the Delhi government, say, for example, that schools need to be shut if a large number of cases are reported. How does it affect the psychology of children, and what should they do at such a harrowing time?
I'm glad you have brought it up, because this question keeps running the circles whenever it comes to, the parent-teacher meeting things. And, I am also a parent and I also have children going to school. And every time a child gets sick or there is fever, all the parents in the, mothers group, they start getting all panicky. So I guess, again, the same thing. We have to accept that infections will happen. And we have to give out a positive message by saying that despite the fact that we'll take all those precautions that we are supposed to, say masks, etc., these infections are probably necessary to build the herd immunity. This is how immunity builds up. So It's all right. And the second thing is, I would definitely request, the experts out there and the people in authority that they also need to, have a consistent approach. Most clinicians today agree onto the fact that children need to go out, they need to go to school.
Yeah.
Most of the toddlers, or if you look at the small children, how do they get immunity to various disorders? Other than the vaccine, it is the social aspect of it. So
Yeah.
it's important for developing immunity. It's important from the perspective of obviously developing a proper personality, social skills, and everything. And it's also important that we stop hitting again the same thing, the panic button ki अरे फिर से case बढ़ गया अब बंद कर दो, because it keeps, it becomes a sort of a cycle.
Do you think this inconsistency also affects children, especially psychologically, considering, the moment they start going to schools, many schools have already started shutting because of a slight number of increase in COVID cases. End of the day, children falling prey to common cold, cough, fever is something which has always remained and happened in schools.
Definitely. And this is exactly the message that we need to give out, that it's always better, how do you feel calm or secure in general in life? It's because of the predictability of the events. And this predictability of the events, if this thing happens, this will happen, is something that keeps us going. It's all the more important for children. Now, when it is important for children, they also need to, see in their environment that people are able to take the situation as normal, that people are able to feel comfortable about, falling sick or having fever. It's all right. Bukhar ho gaya to theek bhi ho jayega. That kind of an attitude. So if the environment is able to give them this message, then obviously they will be less panicked and they will be less comfortable, and the anxiety would not come in the way of their, learning process, their socializing process.
Fair enough, point taken. So would you say today that time has come that we move into physical classes for all students, and with consistency, even if there is a slight increase in case, if a student or two test positive for COVID in a particular class, that shouldn't be reason enough to shut classes? Or would you say that there is a fear, which is also a genuine fear, of children being carriers of COVID and spreading it even further?
See, obviously, it's a tricky situation from the perspective that we have limited knowledge, like the doctor before was also talking about. But from the perspective of a psychiatrist, and from the perspective of somebody who's been through this crisis for the past 2 years, along with the rest of us, I believe there is no reason to shut off schools, shut off classes, shut off offices time and again because the situation, one or two cases of COVID come up in a place. It's all right. So what I mean to say is that we have to accept and acknowledge the fact that we are going to get infected. Now, unless the numbers reach a level where the health system fears that it will not be able to deal with it. That was the scare in the first wave, in the second wave, that the health system in the country would not be able to manage this kind of a problem. I think we are beyond that scare now. I think we have gained the knowledge, the understanding. Also, the virus has come down in the intensity of its impact or the severity of the symptoms. Second important aspect, vaccination is one way of building immunity. Infection is another way of building immunity. After all, what is vaccination? Vaccination is the same attenuated virus that we are taking. Third, we have seen from the past 3 years that children have had better response to the COVID variant, even when it was a severe variant for adults. And children have been already exposed. When so many adults have been exposed, it's unlikely that the children have not been exposed. So they have already developed some amount of immunity to this.
Yes, and absolutely. And the other side of the argument is that when malls are open, when shopping complexes are open, why not schools? But would you say that schools should perhaps think of hiring counselors, psychologists like yourself, psychiatrists, who can talk to parents, who can allay the fear of both students and parents, because that's also the need of the hour?
Exactly, Vishali, and I'm glad again that you brought it up, because I myself had a session with the school of my own children regarding this very fact, because there is so much confusion, because there is so much doubt, because there is so much fear, and parents in general are scared individuals, after having seen whatever has happened. So they need to be told that it's all right. There are so many people who have still not taken vaccine. they come across to me often enough telling me that they haven't taken the first dose also, because there is that kind of a fear still around. So more people need to be educated. More people need to be given the message that it's all right. We will be able to deal with it. There is nothing to worry about, and let's get on with our lives. Because if we are anxious, we have to understand that anxiety is basically a flight or fight response, right? It's a survival. When the survival response is going on, all the body's energies are in the defensive mode. So the actual functioning of the body, be it repair, be it the mechanisms that run the normal functions of the body systems, growth, enjoyment, relaxation, and exactly the treatment or dealing with any kind of an illness, all of that kind of goes down, which means that this kind of a problem increases the possibility of other forms of infections and other forms of diseases. And we have seen in post-COVID era a lot of other illnesses taking the forefront, which has happened not directly as a result of COVID, but because of the anxiety associated with COVID. And in psychiatry realm, we have seen COVID-related anxiety, so much so that we already have papers which are defining COVID anxiety disorder as a term. It's specifically there. So we have to understand the consequence of all these factors also.
Yes, and you speak of this COVID anxiety disorder. Are you seeing some sort of anxiety amongst the younger generation also? Because in this segment, we are focusing on children. So are school-going children also anxious? Parents' anxiety, one can anticipate, but what really about the students? What has been your experience like?
Frankly, Charlie, and I'm sure that most of the psychiatrists can vouch for it, we have seen an increased number of development of anxiety and obsession in the age group of 12 to 14 years during these last 2 years. I myself have personally seen so many patients, so many kids who have developed obsessions for the first time, because the environment, the kind of stress that occurs in this kind of environment, it triggers, as I said, a stress response or a flight or fight response. And that stress response is not coming down. When you suddenly have an acute thing happening, if there is a tiger in front of you, the stress response will come. And then after a while, the tiger will go away and the stress response will come down. But here, what has happened in COVID is that the fear that tiger will come is constantly there. And it is keeping the stress response up continuously for so long that now it's become second nature of the nervous system to react the moment there is somebody who sneezes, somebody who develops some amount of fever or some amount of symptoms related to cold and cough. So this has triggered underlying anxiety disorders, vulnerabilities that already exist in most of us to develop these kind of disorders, which are not going away, which have become part of our pathological.
So what's your advice in conclusion? I'll ask you two more questions before I let you go. First, since you're speaking of this anxiety which is set in amongst students and children especially, and extremely worrying, I'm sure. What would your suggestion be today?
See, my first and foremost suggestion is that we all have to start accepting that COVID is like any other illness that we have to tackle, and it's part of our society now. And the means of tackling this particular situation is to work on ourselves. So we have to work on our health. We have to work on our immunity. We have to work on, having a disciplined routine, proper exercise, proper diet, which is anyway necessary for any person to have a healthy lifestyle. Second, as has already been mentioned, using the mask can become a way of life. There is no...
Okay, and that was... Sorry, I'm interrupting you because that was going to be my next question about the usage of masks. It's all, sounds good theoretically, but how do you get little children to wear masks? I mean, I personally find it a very daunting task. What would be your suggestion? How can parents convince their little ones, especially say toddler and above, those below 12 who've not been inoculated, but have started going to schools already?
See, children follow what adults do. And it's always been the case. Even the smallest of child will see what their parents are doing and will start doing that. The problem only occurs when parents don't do it, children do it, or other people are seen as not doing it. So wearing a mask is something that can become part of a routine if it is done consistently by all people around. And where do you need to do it? Especially, you need to understand you don't have to do it in smaller settings, in houses, in parties, small family events, but in larger settings. So when you go out in public transport, when you go out to malls or markets, when you go to, school, when you settle down in your class and you have been in the class environment, probably continue it for a while. And then while you're having your lunches and all, you will have to take it off. But if you're continuously doing it, it's almost like, wearing shoes. Like wearing shoes that children would not want to do when they are home. But if you put them in socks and shoes and take them to school, they are wearing it throughout the day because everybody else is. So I think it can be done if it is followed without, adding any kind of a fear or anxiety associated with. And inconsistencies are a problem. Inconsistencies vis-a-vis in terms of, taking, stopping school, etc. And also inconsistencies vis-a-vis, giving advice that now you can wear mask or now you need not wear mask. So that's why I said that wearing a mask never protects us from pollution. It protects us from other common cold, etc. kind of diseases as well. And it's not a bad habit. It's not going to harm anybody if we were able to wear a mask.
So why not? In fact, it's very interesting the message coming from both the doctors in the panel. If you speak of the physical manifestations of the disease or even the psychological impact, end of the day, consistency seems to be key. And inconsistency, what is most important right now, if I, sort of summarize what both the experts had to say and the advice they had to give was masking. Continue wearing your masks. Do not wait for a government mandate. You don't need a fine to wear a mask. Mask can help you prevent various diseases and especially fight COVID. I remember an interview I'd taken a long time ago where one of the doctors said that mask is a vaccine in your pocket. Doesn't hurt anyone. Hopefully, mask mandate will not be required and citizens will themselves abide by it. And perhaps, as Dr. Kapoor says, children follow adults. If parents start wearing masks, maybe children also would, as a practice, as a good habit, start wearing masks, and it eventually becomes second nature. All right. On that note, thank you, Dr. Kapoor, for joining us on NewsX. It's a wrap on this bulletin.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.